Hey guys, you're listening to Parker's One Man Podcast, Episode 3. As to be expected, I'm joined by Zohner. Hey guys, I'm a shadow, the true self. And over here we have Tim. What's up? I'm a persona, the facade used to face life's hardships. And I am both the literal host of these two and the host of this very podcast. I'm Parker. So, with the last episode, guys, we dedicated the entire show to talking about the Super Smash Bros. Nintendo Direct. However, that wasn't the only Nintendo Direct we had last week. We actually had a second one. This one was uploaded to YouTube directly with no release, with no prior coverage or announcement. It was just surprisingly, spontaneously uploaded directly to YouTube with no promotion whatsoever. And this was detailing the localization of the Japanese game Tomodachi Collection for 3DS, renamed Tomodachi Life for the USA and for the West. And Tomodachi Collection, well, Tomodachi Life, as it's going to be referred to here in the United States, is another life simulation game. Similar to Animal Crossing, just in the fact that it is a simulation game, but they've taken they've taken a noticeable, significant effort to distinguish Tomodachi Life from Animal Crossing. They don't want them to be even thought of as one and the same, as similar games. They're trying to really differentiate one from another. And in Tomodachi Life, the it's not so much of a direct interaction between your character and the villagers, the residents of your town. It's more of just a observational game where you upload your Miis. Your Miis populate the little island of Tomodachi Life, and you can upload Miis from the people you've street passed. You can scan QR codes to get like Nintendo executives like Iwata or Reggie and there, and of course you can upload Mii's just from your internal Mii Studio on your 3DS. So that means you and your friends and your family can also be moving to the island of Tomodachi Life, and it's more based on just spectating. You don't actually directly interact and mingle with everybody. You just watch. You can of course, you can feed them and change their clothes and everything, but a lot of it is predetermined by when you import a Mii into the game. You toggle its character attributes, like if it's serious or quirky, or if it's introverted or more gregarious. You just there's a little sliding panel on the touchscreen that you gauge their personality, and then it'll tell you about their personality, and you can import them directly to the game. And from there, you sit back and watch. And they did a nice job of demonstrating this in the direct. I think they really put a lot of emphasis on explaining what exactly Tomodachi Life is and expounding on the scenarios you'll encounter and how the Mii characters interact with each other. So, what do you guys think of the announcement, first of all? We already knew it was coming because after the financial meeting back in, I think it was January or maybe early February, the Wall Street Journal picked it up that from Iwata that they were in the process of localizing it. So now we get an official reveal, an official title, and it's actually coming to stores and the eShop on June 6th. So what do you guys think of Tomodachi Life so far? Let's start with you, Tim. Well, you know, I was never big into Animal Crossing, and this doesn't look. I mean, I can see how it's different. I played Animal Crossing, so I just by watching the direct, I can tell that it is different. Like how you explained it, like I can tell it is more of a spectator game. You don't actually, like what you said, you don't actually interact with people, and I think that can add some appeal to it, just because what they showed in there was just bizarre, and it was actually really funny. I thought the direct, some of the scenarios they had with Aonuma confessing his love to the Zelda Mii, and Miyamoto's just in the booth next to him, and he turns around and some sort of quirky, dramatic Japanese music plays. I thought those scenarios were really funny, but my question is, how frequent will those scenarios occur, and and if they're all going to be that funny, and if it's actually worth picking up the game and playing it just for that very reason. I do like it because with Animal Crossing, it always kind of deterred me from heading back to it because I would pick it up like and play it, and I would realize this is kind of boring. It's just menial tasks, and I'd put it down and wouldn't come back to it for a couple months, and then when I got back to it, it would just give me the guilt trip. They would guilt me, and my my townsfolk would move away, and there would be a bunch of weeds all over the um, place, and it wasn't fun going back to Animal Crossing after setting it down for a month or two, and so it really was its own worst enemy in that regard. In that when you stop playing, that was basically it. There was no return unless you wanted to go through all the admonishing of whoever the characters are, and then having to clean up and do some gardening work, some heavy gardening work with watering all your wilted flowers, plucking all the weeds and whatnot. And that's really what inhibited me from heading back to Animal Crossing. That was probably the greatest deterrent from me playing Animal Crossing more than just for a couple times. I mean, I don't even pick up the games anymore. But this game, it looks really funny. I mean, I laughed, I'll admit it, during the trailer, during the reveal. I thought it was really funny, and the scenarios were well written, and those that they highlighted were hilarious, I think, with the Mii's, doing the ritualistic dance around the Virtual Boy. I mean, that was very tongue-in-cheek, and it wasn't something I would expect from Nintendo. I mean, they've gone to great strides to write the Virtual Boy out of their history, almost like the CDI, but it wasn't something I would expect from them, but it was still very funny, and I like that Nintendo that likes to go back to its past, like in Rusty's Real Deal Baseball with the Ultra Machine. I like the Nintendo that is very self-aware and self-referential in that regard, but I just don't know. I don't know if I'm sold on this game or not yet. It's too late. It's too early to tell. Yeah, with those scenarios, yeah, those were extremely funny. They were just like an absurdist, manic Japanese nightmare, and it's not something you would expect from Nintendo, but to localize in from Nintendo of America anyway, to bring over to the States. But it sold exceptionally well in Japan, like over 1.5 million copies, more than that. I don't have the figure right here, but it sold really well in Japan, and compared to the Animal Crossing numbers, which sold 7 million worldwide, I bet they were willing to take the gamble with this and bring it over, just because it's not the same game as they're emphasizing, but emphasized, but they are very similar just in genre alone. So I think if they do strike that same chord, resonate with the same crowd, the demographic that bought Animal Crossing, I think this will be a success in America. But I don't know how many people are going to pick up on that Japanese humor, and they've actually noted that the localization effort has been to very much westernize it. They've removed certain foods and altered certain scenarios, introduced completely new mini games. Like there's a rapping mini game in Tomodachi Life that wasn't there, that wasn't in the Japanese version. So they're taking significant precautions to make sure that this appeals to a Western audience and just doesn't go right over the head of people of a more casual Western audience, which is their target with this game. This is not a hardcore game whatsoever. It's very much a casual game that's meant to appeal to the same people that brought Animal Crossing, but they can easily estrange that same audience just because of how Japanese this game is. Like, if you haven't watched the direct, watch it, and you won't need any further explanation. Like, there are these crazy dream sequences where your Mii characters are morphed into snails and they're racing, and you're out on the pier and there's giant like a Godzilla me appearing from the sea, and I mean it's very much Japanese. It's very quirky in that Japanese sense, and um, I just don't know how well that's going to translate over to the Western audience, but I'm excited for it. I think it looks really fun, really funny, like Tim mentioned, and I'm I'm on board with it. What about you, Zohner? Well, I really like Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing is probably one of my favorite Nintendo franchises, and I also really like The Sims, which hasn't been brought up yet. Which I think this game can be more akin to The Sims than even Animal Crossing, in that it is much more of an observational game where you create everybody and you import them and you just watch how they interact with one another. Whereas Animal Crossing was it was very much confined to the individual. What you did was what you did, and you didn't really have any control over the other residents. This game seems to broaden that and to expand it, and it really your control is over everybody in town, although it comes at the expense of your um, of the potency of that control. You can't actually dictate what everybody does the at an exact moment in time, but you can dictate things like their personality, their clothes. I don't know what else, but you can decorate their rooms and everything too, and see how they interact with that. So, like in the direct, it showed I think it showed Iwata, and his carpet was the pattern of the original NES controller, and he was just rolling around on it. And I'm sure you can't actually dictate if he rolls around on it, but you can definitely influence that through his personality, through the gauge you do at the very beginning of the game. And so just setting up these scenarios and the environments and allowing your Mii's to really have their own conscious and free will and see how they interact with the environment. I think that's going to be really interesting, and I'm really excited for this game. I think it's going to be very unique in that it is a very Japanese game, but they are taking those precautions, like you mentioned, Parker, to westernize it and to make it appeal to a Western audience. So I think it's gonna be Animal Crossing level success with New Leaf. I think we can't expect this game to sell 6 million copies worldwide by the time it's released here. By the time half a year has gone after its release, I think we can't expect similar numbers to that. Just if they advertise it, and if the marketing and promotion is similar to Animal Crossing, and if people understand what it is, I think they really can hit a home run with this game, and I'm personally excited for it. Um, so moving on from just the basic premise of the game, we're gonna see it released on June 6th. So that's not that far away. And we also know that Smash Brothers is coming somewhere in that same time frame, with the 3DS version slated for a summer release. I mean, I bet my money's on sometime in July, just to give Tomodachi Life an opportunity to breathe and really come into its own, to really hit home with the 3DS owners. But other than that, April's completely dry. We got Rusty's Real Deal Baseball at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the month, excuse me. I think that was on the 3rd, and then we don't really have anything coming out till May, till the 2nd of May, where we get both Kirby Triple Deluxe and Mario Golf World Tour. But then after that, we don't really have anything until June, until Tomodachi Life, and then after that we don't know what's going on until Smash Bros is released, and then the back half of the year is completely wide open. There's no signs of any new releases, and I know that it's still a little early in the year, and like last year at the beginning of the year we had no idea like Zelda was coming, or the Donkey Kong port, or even Animal Crossing. We knew Animal Crossing had been released in Japan already, but we didn't know when it was coming to the West. We knew it was coming to the West, but we didn't know when. So there's still a lot of it's still very open for the rest of the year, But what do you guys think? What do you think we're going to see for the rest of the year on the 3DS? I mean, there's not much past Smash Bros. At this point in time, and what other franchises are there to touch on? I mean, we've done Mario, we've done Zelda. There's been, there's going to be a Kirby. There was Kid Icarus. They brought Kid Icarus back from the dead. Um, there's Pokemon already. I mean, I guess we can expect a new Pokemon version, whether that will be the Ruby and Sapphire remixes, but I don't think we'll get those until next year at the very earliest. And I think we will get a third version or third and fourth version if the trend from last generation is to be followed. But what do you guys think? What do you think we're going to get the rest of the year for the 3DS? Let's start with you, Tim. Um, that's a good point. I haven't really thought about that a lot, just because I've been more focused on the home consoles right now, whether it be PS4, the Xbox One, or even the Wii U. And the Wii U doesn't really have a lot of games coming out this year either. But we know we got Smash Bros. And we know at E3 we're gonna get a Zelda announcement and probably some more. We've had promises, like we still haven't seen a majority of the games that were revealed during last year's January Direct. We have no information on the Shin Megami Tensei Fire Emblem crossover, if that even exists anymore. We haven't heard anything about Yarn Yoshi since then, and we know Hyrule Warriors is coming, even though I'm not too excited about that. So the Wii U's future is more certain than the 3DS is at this point, which I think is very interesting. And I don't know. I think Pokemon is a given for the 3DS this year, but beyond that, can we see a Majora's Mask remake? Will we get a Majora's Mask remake? I wouldn't mind if Nintendo went back and revisited some Nintendo 64 classics like they did at the beginning of the 3DS's life with the Star Fox re-release and the Ocarina of Time remaster. I would like to see something like a Super Mario 64 3D remake. I know we got one on the DS, and I know people, if they want a Super Mario 64 remake at this point in time, they want it in HD on the Wii U. But honestly, that game was great, and I would love to play that game on a decent screen. I thought the DS game was fine, but it was still very much the polygon bombarded character models that were the Nintendo 64 version. So I'd like to see a really nice, crisp, refined version of that game. But there are also a lot of other games that we could revisit from the N64. But as for new games, original games, I don't really know. I mean, I guess a Metroid would be nice, a 2D side-scrolling Metroid. We just got Metroid Fusion released on the Wii U's Virtual Console, and I'd love to see them revisit the classic Super Metroid, original Metroid formula with that game after it kind of veered off from that into Metroid Prime and even Metroid Other M, which was kind of a hybrid, and we all know how that game turned out, not too well, but that would be good. But other than that, I mean, they could revisit something like I know we got a Punch Out reboot on the Wii. I think that would work well on the 3DS. With the 3D, I think you could do something really cool with the 3D visuals for something like Punch Out. But there's also like F-Zero, which Miyamoto has kind of teased in the past, but he said they wouldn't release something unless they had a definitive new direction to go into. And I definitely think that 3D is what Miyamoto and company Nintendo would constitute as a new direction. I think even though they kind of drifted away from that, like they were very adamant at the beginning of the 3DS's release, they almost forced the 3D on us, and now they've dialed back on that, and that's not necessarily bad, but I would think a very high speed 60 frame per second racer, an F-Zero in particular, would look really well and really good in 3D, and I think they could revisit something like that. But I mean, where's the new IP, excuse me. Miyamoto's been promising us one for some time now, and there was rumors that we were going to get it revealed last year at E3, and I know it's probably coming to the Wii U because the Wii U is in desperate need of a major system selling software. I mean, the 3DS is in excellent condition right now. It's already been a great year for the 3DS. We got Bravely Default at the beginning of the year, and um, I mean, even the Yoshi game wasn't that bad. I don't think it was that bad anyway. Um, then we get Smash Bros. And Tomodachi Life, and like I think we're all in agreement that we're going to get another Pokemon game. So I don't think the 3DS is desperate for any more titles, but it definitely couldn't hurt it. And if it wants to even come close to the DS's lifetime sales, it definitely will need it. And I guess we really have to go to third parties at this point. I mean, get Platinum Games to work on something, maybe another Okami Den esque game. Get something like that. Even though I know that I don't think that was made by Platinum, was it? I think it was internally developed by Capcom because they own that IP. But I would like to see Platinum work on something for the 3DS or any third party developer at this point in time. Really, I mean, Nintendo could always bring over something like they got a Dragon Quest VII remake in Japan. That would be great. I would love to see that. But the 3DS, it has that install base. It's the largest install base of the current generation systems right now, especially of the handhelds. So I don't really see an excuse not for the 3DS, for the third party developers to make games for it. So I think Nintendo has provided them with the incentive of the install base, and they've shown that you can make excellent games on the 3DS. Just they show that demonstrated that right out of the gate by porting one of the greatest games of all time, Ocarina of Time, into 3D. They've shown that the 3DS has the capacity to play awesome, to make and support awesome games. And I think really the ball's in the third party court right now. But Nintendo can't slack either. But I think they do need to shift their efforts towards the Wii U. Yeah, that's interesting with the with what you mentioned about the third parties, because it seemed like with the DS, of course, that sold meteorically. I mean, the sales numbers were astronomical for that system, and you also got a lot of shovelware on it. But it's interesting because third parties haven't really jumped at the opportunity to develop on the 3DS. I'm sure it costs more money than what it did for the DS, and they're just the industry has kind of been cutting back on resources that we see. That's been evident recently with all the layoffs and stuff at these huge corporations, these huge developers and publishers. But it's interesting how the third parties we haven't seen a large amount of third party activity on the 3DS that hasn't been, incentivized by Nintendo or really initiated by Nintendo at all. I can't really think of the last time a good third-party game completely separate from Nintendo came out on the 3DS. It, as far as I'm concerned, it might have been at launch with something like I don't know, Street Fighter, or there were like the Metal Gear Solid port and some Resident Evil games as well. But I can't remember when we got a very good third-party title on the 3DS, and that's interesting that you brought that up. But as for those kind of forgotten properties that Nintendo has kind of just ignored for the past, half decade or so, I don't know if the 3DS is the place to bring those back, because they do have such a obsessive fan base that it might even still be on the fence with the Wii U. That if they were to bring back something like an F-Zero in HD, or even a new Kid Icarus adventure on the Wii U, I think that would help with the Wii U sales. So I think they'd be better off focusing those forgotten intellectual properties towards the Wii U. I think for the 3DS though, it's going to be interesting. I don't mind what they've been doing with the little mini digital downloads, but that's definitely not going to incentivize people to go out and buy 3DSs, which isn't necessarily a concern for Nintendo at this point in time, but it's definitely something they have to future-proof for. They have to be prepared to continue to incentivize people to go out and buy 3DSs. So I wouldn't. I mean, we have the engine for something like a 3D Mario game or the top-down Link Between Worlds-esque Zelda game. So I wouldn't be surprised if, I know we just got Link Between Worlds last year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did announce something like a Super Mario 3D Land successor, or just showed a glimpse into a new 3DS Zelda. But I don't think that. I think the Zelda is much more of a pipe dream at this point, just because we know that the Wii U Zelda is going to be revealed at E3 this year. So I don't think we aren't gonna get a Zelda overload this year, even though we did get two Zeldas last year, two really good Zeldas, the Wind Waker HD remake and A Link Between Worlds. But I think at this point in time, it probably would be. We're a couple years removed from something like 3D Land, so even though we got 3D World last year, I don't think it would be a bad decision for Nintendo to revisit something like that, but I can see how it would be kind of divisive and contentious amongst the skeptics out there who always say, "Oh, the Mario games are just the same." So I think Nintendo's in a very interesting situation with the 3DS right now, just because they have already put out a lot of their really first-party, top-tier franchises. So it'll be interesting where they head in the future. But I mean, just the fact that another Pokemon game is coming out, I think that's gonna sell copies, sell systems by the thousands. Just even though it will be a reiteration of what we got last year in Pokemon X and Y, I think it'll still really be the impetus to shift units out the door. But what about you, Zohner? Where do you think Nintendo takes the 3DS after we see Smash Bros in the summer? Well, right now we touched on this last podcast with the how if they market it right, they can really use the 3DS Smash Bros to sell the Wii U as a system and the Wii U Smash Bros. And I think it would be smart if Nintendo continued to take that approach in using the 3DS as kind of a marketing pillar to the Wii U, and to indoctrinate those who have already adopted a 3DS, whether it be from the promise of 3D or something like Animal Crossing, and introduce them to the Wii U. You kind of see they do pop up the little adverts and promotional banners in the 3DS eShop, but I would like to see further connectivity between the 3DS and the Wii U, whether it be by way of crossover titles or something like what they experimented with the GameCube, like the Tinkle Tuner, excuse me, or something like that. I think that's the direction Nintendo should take the 3DS in at this point in time, because the 3DS is doing extremely well on its own. It's consistently the top-selling piece of hardware in Japan, and they haven't even gotten the 2DS over there, so I don't think that's a concern for Nintendo of Japan right now. But the Wii U definitely is a concern for Nintendo, just the corporation as a whole worldwide. And I think if they use the 3DS to sell the Wii U, I think that would not only be... I think that's a very smart move for them, because the 3DS install base is there. And it provides... It's almost like killing two birds with one stone, in that you can do just these very simple crossplay titles like they do on the PS3 and Vita, with something like the Final Fantasy X remake is the most recent one I can think of. If you did something like that, if you gave consumers the opportunity, the option to buy a game on their Wii U, play it in HD, and then when they have to take the bus or the train or something like that, they can load it up onto their 3DS and play there. I think that's a very smart strategy that Sony employed with the PS3 and the PS Vita, and I think Nintendo would be just stupid not to emulate a similar strategy with the 3DS and the Wii U. And I think that's the direction they should take it. If they will, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think Nintendo's that committed or organized really to allow crossplay just yet. I mean, the Smash Bros does show that they are taking strides to do that, and I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year we did get something like a unified shop account, where in that you can purchase something like an NES game like Super Mario Bros. On your 3DS and download it directly to your Wii U or Crossplay account. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, even by the end of the summer, if we got something similar to that. And I think the next step is to create unique experiences, new experiences for both that can be enjoyed both on the 3DS and the Wii U. But I think also you have to be cautious to that, just because that can potentially come at come at the expense of the Wii U, and that the Wii U is in a real rut right now, and that it needs to display its power because it already has that stigma of being the underpowered system, which is it's obvious when compared to something like the PS4 and the Xbox One. But having to make a game that is cross-compatible with both the 3DS and the Wii U, I think that is only furthers the detriment of the burden of the graphics on the Wii U, because they have to accommodate a system that is essentially on par with the Wii or the GameCube that just displays in 3D. So I think Nintendo's in a very interesting situation with the 3DS, and it's not necessarily a bad situation, but I think their concerns right now are more dedicated towards the Wii U, and I think that's where their options with the 3DS really open up. If they want to use the 3DS to promote the Wii U, to sell the Wii U to the consumers who have bought a 3DS but have not yet bought a Wii U, or if they want to continue to distinguish each system from one another by whether it be by way of graphics or gameplay capabilities, even though they both are fundamentally the same in providing a touchscreen and a display screen. I think there are opportunities to distinguish one from another. But with that being said, I'm with you guys. I don't know where they take it with the 3DS, but I think it has to be at the benefit of the Wii U. I think that's what Nintendo needs to do if they want to keep the Wii U alive. Yeah, that's interesting what you mentioned about the comparison you did with the PlayStation consoles, the Vita and the PS3. And we haven't really seen that with the PS4 yet, but they're definitely getting there. It already supports crossplay and like the off-screen play, similar to the Wii U gamepad, and we actually saw a significant spike in Vita sales just because of the PS4's release. So it's not unprecedented that a company can use kind of their successful hardware to push their faltering hardware, like the 3DS and the Wii U. I think Nintendo should take opportunities to do something similar to what Sony has done, but I also agree with what you said about how they need to distinguish the Wii U from the 3DS and really highlight the HD capabilities, the graphical capabilities of the Wii U, because it is the first time a Nintendo system has been in HD, and it's the first time we're going to be able to play something like Zelda in HD. We've already seen Mario in HD, and that looked great. And I'm excited to see what Zelda looks like in HD. I'm almost convinced it's going to look better than Mario. It's going to be the best looking game on the Wii U, and even maybe I don't think the PS4 or the Xbox One have really come into fruition with their graphical prowess. So I don't even think really any of those games out there look too impressive right now. Like, I think Super Mario 3D World is on par with some of the most graphically advanced games on something like the PS4. Like Infamous Second Son, for example, it aims for a much more realistic aesthetic. So of course it looks better just in relation to what we see every day in real life. But due to the art style and the artistic direction that Nintendo takes something like Super Mario 3D World, I think that game looks just as good, if not better, than something running on the PS4 built from the ground up to be supported by the PS4. And I think Zelda, with a smart combination of art style and with proper implementation of the Wii U's graphical capabilities, I think it could be one of the best looking games to date, just because of how ingenious Nintendo is when it comes to designing and devising art styles to complement their hardware and to really accentuate the capabilities of it, and whether it be to undermine their graphical limitations or really exploit them and highlight them. And I think Nintendo really needs to show off that the Wii U is an HD system, and I think this is their opportunity to do something like that with the Wii U, and they can't let the 3DS drag them down just by having to support a system that isn't HD. It doesn't have the best screens and can't support an HD caliber experience. So I think we're all in agreement that Nintendo's not in the worst place with the 3DS, and that they really do need to put all their concern towards all their effort towards the Wii U. But it's somewhat troubling that we don't really have any knowledge, any insight into what happens after Smash Bros. Comes out. But who knows? Tomorrow we might get another Nintendo Direct that details second half 2014 for the 3DS, and whatever they decide to pull out, it's probably going to be good. I mean, looking at last year for the 3DS, that was an excellent year for the 3DS. We got Zelda, one of Nintendo's biggest franchises. We got Pokemon, another one, just a blockbuster mega hit franchise, and then even a sleeper hit in something like Fire Emblem, which was an exceptionally well put together game. It was a great game. So Nintendo, we know they can make great games, and we know they can make great games on the 3DS, so I'm not concerned with the future for the 3DS, and I'm more interested in where they take the Wii U, like what Tim said. But I think we're running out of time for today, guys, so thank you so much, Zohner. Thank you so much, Tim. This has been Parker's One Man Podcast. Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye.